send this to you, the link to you. All
Yeah.
right, Abby,
Yeah.
we are being recorded now.
Nice.
Okay, my name is Cathie Young, and I was diagnosed in December of 2011 with invasive lobular carcinoma. That's a form of breast cancer. It's the kind of breast cancer that they don't often spot on the mammograms. Mammograms find kind of tumors, but mine grew more like a spider web or, kind of like that. And so they didn't find it in all my mammograms. And so by the time they found it, it was really large, kind of like, really life-threatening. So how severe was it? The answer to that one is it was really severe. I had to do a double mastectomy very, very quickly. I didn't have any chemo or any radiation until later on. And that when they did the surgery, they found that it had gone into my lymph nodes. And that's what carries it to other organs of the body. So that's when we knew we were in for a fight to save my life. And the 23 lymph nodes are a lot of lymph nodes to lose in a surgery like that. And we found out by Philip and I went in for a diagnostic mammogram because we knew something was up with that right breast. And so I went in for a diagnostic mammogram, and they evidently spotted something because they called me like in 10 minutes. I just barely gotten home. And they said, we need to have you come in for a biopsy. And I looked at Philip, and Philip said, how about I go with you? That's my husband, by the way. Said, how about I go with you? And I said, oh, no, that's not necessary. Well, it really was necessary because that biopsy was really bad. I remember looking at the screen because you can face it. And that's when they put a needle in your breast and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, what is that big dark thing on the screen? Well, that was the cancer, that had been there. So, but how we actually found out was a day later, the breast surgeon that had recommended the MRI actually had me go into her office after that MRI, which is another test that they kind of like, I don't know, it's like technology, but they look at a slice of the area. It's all in little slices so they can see it really, really up close and personal. And so I remember sitting in her office with Philip, and Dr. Coleman was her name. And she basically said, you have cancer. And those 3 words rock your world. And I can remember feeling a little bit faint, feeling like the floor had slipped out from underneath me. And we went to the car afterwards and called an oncologist, that's a cancer doctor, and made an appointment, to see her. And then I called my sister, and I was just sobbing and said, it's really bad news. And I remember my sister saying, Cathie, God is never late, and we're going to get through this. So even though I was a lady pastor, I needed somebody to give me some faith that I could borrow. So that was good. That was good. The initial thoughts and fears that I had are like most cancer patients, and that is I'm going to die. And especially because mine was so serious, but almost every cancer patient I've ever worked with has told me that they feel like they're going to die. What I've said before is like death comes knocking at your door. And even not that very serious cancers, people still feel that way. So it really doesn't matter how truly serious the cancer is. Almost everybody that hears those 3 words, you have cancer, feels like, that they could die. So there you go. What were my treatment options? Mine was so advanced and so severe that I really didn't have a lot of options. My first option was a mastectomy. They could have just taken my right breast, but this particular type of cancer I have is more likely to go what they call bilateral or go to the other breast. And so I just wanted the breasts to be taken off, and that was my approach. And so it didn't hurt my feelings that the very first thing they did was a double mastectomy. Then the next thing that they did was 6 months of really, really hard chemo. Really, I call it harsh. It was very harsh chemo. And yes, my hair fell out and I didn't have any eyebrows or eyelashes and I was weak. But in the morning I would get up about 10 o'clock and I'd drag myself to the bathroom and I'd put a wig on and I put makeup on and, put some fake eyelashes on. And I still looked a little sick, but I looked sort of normal, which was really good. And I remember going through Trader Joe's one day. I needed to pick up a couple things. And there was a lady kind of behind me. And I felt like she was in the same aisle that I was in. Every time I turned, there she was. And when I was putting the groceries in the car, she came up behind me and said, hello, excuse me. She said, I really want my hair to look just like yours. And she said, where did you get your hair done? And all I did was pick up my wig and show her that. And I think she was terribly embarrassed, but I thought it was hysterical. It was really funny. So that was for 6 months. And then they did 6 weeks of daily radiation. So it was almost a year, that I was in treatment. They did some more surgeries. I had more surgeries. And then I'm even now, 8.5 years later, I'm on a hormone inhibitor. It's a particular type of drug that causes your body to not produce estrogen, because my cancer was estrogen driven, was fed by estrogen. Let's see, how did you feel during treatment? Well, I felt pretty awful. I think chemo makes you feel pretty awful, depending on the chemotherapy. But God was really good to me, and he gave me all that I needed to stay pretty active. I was working as a pastor, and I was working full time that whole time. Now, full time was kind of like 10 o'clock to 3 o'clock. And at 3 o'clock, I would come home and I'd take off my wig and I'd put on my little cotton cap, because that felt so good to me. And I'd sit in my big recliner that Philip got me for this whole cancer journey. And I'd lay back and I'd turn the television on really low and I'd just sleep. I would just sleep. I think one of the hardest things about how your life changes is that it's kind of like a ship that gets in a storm at sea. And one of the things sometimes they have to do is throw off the ship, some of the weight, the extra weight. And that's what I had to do with my life. I had to throw off social occasions. I was not up to social things. I had to throw off, at the time I was a speaker and people that had booked me to do speaking, outside the church. I had to cancel all of those appointments. So Philip and I mostly, just stayed at home, and then I did my chemotherapy and went to the church to work, and then we came home and stayed at home a lot. But Philip kept saying to me, we have only one goal this time, and that's to get you well, which was really a good thing to say. Is this answering your questions?
Yeah.
Okay, you just interrupt me anytime, okay?
Oh, okay.
How has it impacted your life? Oh my gosh, what a great question. Some people, when they get done with their treatment, just kind of want to move on with life. But I kind of knew that wouldn't be me. About halfway through my chemotherapy time, I read a book called Circle Makers. It's a book about praying about something over and over and over again until you see God answer the prayer. And I remember praying the prayer, which was my circle prayer. And that was, God, if there's anything good left in our lives, let it come out of this journey. And really what that meant was, Lord, my life is, I spend my life in front of people all the time. And so if you want to use this cancer to help people, then just show me how to do it. And it probably was only a couple of weeks later that I felt like God was asking me to put a yard sign in my front yard. So I put a yard sign in my front yard that said, faith-based cancer support this Thursday, 10 o'clock. And Abby, more than 20 people from the neighborhood showed up. And that's when I knew this was important. And I understood those people in spite of whether they male or female or what kind of cancer they had. And they understood me, they understood my fears, I understood their concerns. And that started an outreach called Cancer with Compassion. And we had a support group there in Southern California that was big and wonderful. It just was great. And it's still flourishing now, all these years later. And so when Philip and I retired back to Oregon, to Bend, where we met and married, I was able to start up that kind of an outreach here and work with St. Charles Cancer Center and also BMC Summit's oncology department to basically recreate that, which has been wonderful. And during the pandemic, we've used Zoom, for all of our support groups. They just meet on Zoom, and it's like talking to you right now. I can see your whole face, not just the part that isn't covered by the mask, and I can hear your voice, and that feels really good to cancer patients. They really, really appreciate being able to connect up during this pandemic time. So that's how it's affected my life. It's changed our lives, both my life and Philip's life, really, really greatly. Were there any positive outcomes? Well, I just told you one.
Yeah.
That's the Cancer with Compassion outreach that we do. That was a really a positive outcome. I think for me, Abby, the Cancer with Compassion outreach was a reason to live. And when you have something that's bigger than you, cancer was I have had a couple of really tough things happen in my life, but without a doubt, cancer was the worst thing that ever happened to me and my husband. And yet I can look back on it and say that God didn't just make that bearable, but he made it beautiful in ways by all of these faces and all of these people that we've been able to touch their lives and they've touched ours. Yeah. And that's been the reason to live. So I don't ever have to wonder if there's a reason for me to live. I mean, one reason is I get to hang out with my husband, who I am kind of crazy about. But also this cancer outreach is just a really important part of my life and who I am. And, when I see God the Father someday, I think my cancer outreach is going to be certainly as big as my being a pastor for 30 years. So that's kind of positive outcomes.
Yeah. I think it's really nice for other people who've had cancer to be able to have something like that's faith-based, but have it be led by someone who's gone through similar things to them.
That's right. Yeah, I actually attended a number of support groups in Southern California before ours really got going too far, just to see what they did, kind of find, is there a template, that I can follow? And one of the things that I found that I was surprised at is most of the leaders of these groups hadn't had cancer. They cared very much about cancer issues, but they hadn't had cancer. And I think it's like, if I want to have a ticket into somebody's life and they're a cancer patient, whether it's a little bit of cancer or a lot of cancer, like a real life-threatening cancer, the ticket in is stamped with, I had cancer, and this is my story. And I've never had someone that has pushed that away. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
So you got any more questions?
Is there anything else that you would want to talk about?
Actually, I think I can send this to you. I wrote a book about my experience, and I don't know where you're going to prepare your report or whatever it is, but if you'd like, I can send you a copy of that book, not for you to quote from. I'm not asking you to do that.
Yeah.
You can just lift it up and say, she wrote a book about her journey. And so that's the only other thing I can think of.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
This has been really fun, Abby.
Yeah, it's been nice. It's interesting to hear about different people's experiences and stuff.
Isn't that true? Because your mom's experience and my experience are very different, just the type of treatment that you have to have. And that's really what it's about. My outreach is people like your mom that had this, and then somebody else. But your mom and I, had some of the same early diagnosis fears and that kind of thing. So we could always connect up. And you know how much I love your mom.
Yeah.
Okay, darling, what do you think? Is that all for today?
Yeah, that seemed really good. Thank you for agreeing to do this.
Oh, honey, I'm just so happy to do it. It's a real honor and blessing. When I saw your name on the emails, I'm like, oh, I got an email from Abby. So I love it. I love it. You can ask me to do anything, anytime, and I probably will say yes. All right, darling. Thank you for changing times too. I just
Oh,
appreciate
yeah.
it so much.
I didn't have anything this afternoon, so
That worked out well. I'm glad. Yes, yes. The
Yeah.
Zoom, yes. Thumbs up. I send my kisses. Give your mom a hug for me.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome, Abby. Bye.
Bye.